Thank you for taking the time to watch our Chem-Man inventory demonstration. I'm going to give you a brief overview of how our inventory system works. We do understand that operations use inventory in different ways, so what we have done is we've given you different options under the Setup menu, System Settings, Inventory tab. This allows you to customize it the way you need to customize it for your own company. Let me explain what some of these options are. Choose vendor per each chemical on job entry. In the program, you're allowed to enter your vendors, including possibly a customer as a vendor, because sometimes customers bring in their chemical too. So it helps you maintain a balance for each vendor. Now, if you have the same chemical for different vendors, you may need to know which area or stash to get your chemicals out of. So whenever you say choose vendor per each chemical on job entry, when you enter the job, it will have a drop down for vendor input. And so you'll be able to put that vendor in there, and it will reflect on the loader sheets and the application reports. So it will also reduce your inventory for that particular vendor. The display warehouse, what that is, it allows you to set up warehouses. And we have several companies using this. What you can do is it's similar to the vendor. It'll have a drop down. Which warehouse did this come out of? And then also when adding a new chemical default as inventory item, some people don't prefer to use that because they said they only want to use a few inventory items in their database. So whenever you add a new chemical, it automatically defaults to that. So if you're going to maintain an inventory for most of your chemicals, then you probably want to select that. You can always uncheck it or check it at the time of your chemical being added. Inventory start date. Sometimes we have companies that use the program for several years, and then they decide they want to start using inventory. So you don't want a history of all those transactions in the past to deduct from your inventory. You just want to start fresh. So you can set your date to be a starting date, or if you leave it empty, it will just be from the beginning of when you started using the program. On the left, when you print your inventory reports, you can either subtotal it by vendor and chemical, or just subtotal it by chemical only. The post-inventory transactions to reports, basically what that means is whenever you do print out your inventory, at what point do you want to see it taken out? So if you put in a job, do you want to take it out of quantity on hand at that point, or would you prefer to see it after you cleared your invoices? So that's an explanation of the setup on your inventory, and we will help you set this up whenever you do purchase the program. So now if I go to my chemical, I'd like to show you a chemical that I just recently added. Go search for it. It's called Pixaro. When I click on edit and look at it, you'll see what I'm talking about where it added the inventory. I could put a default vendor in the system for that Pixaro. I'm going to leave it empty though, just to show you how you can either have a default or leave it empty. If you did want to charge for the chemical, if you're doing it during a field application, then you can put the price there. If you're selling out the door, you can put it under over-the-counter chemical sale price. All right, so I'm going to click on cancel there. I didn't make any changes. Now I'm going to go into inventory adds and deducts. So right here, enter inventory adds or deducts. So if I put in a vendor, I'm going to put CPS for my vendor. The reference number is just for you. So if it's like a purchase order number, or you could put BAL if your beginning balance is that amount. You might want to do an inventory when you start inventory and see what you have on hand. I'm going to put Pixaro there, choose it. And if they were bringing it in for a particular customer, you could put that in. It's all about filtering on the reports. I had set up, when I set my chemical, I said my cost is 55. You could leave it at 0 or whatever. If you update it right here, it will update your chemical so you'll know what the latest value of the chemical is. I'm going to say we received 100 gallons just for demonstration purposes. And there we go. And I'll just assume it's today. You could put more chemicals in. Whenever you review this, it's time to post it. So I'm going to click on Post Transactions. And all that does, if you go to Inventory, Review Posted Inventory, you can see that I just added that chemical right there. If I made a mistake, I could unpost it, either delete it or fix it or edit it and repost it. So there we go. So now what I want to do is a quantity on hand. So I'm going to click on quantity on hand. And there's multiple ways to filter the program. I'm just going to go ahead and click on, and you can also sort it in different ways. I'm going to go ahead and sort it by vendor right here and click on view report. So if you'll notice, I put that in under CPS. So if I go down here, I can see CPS, I've got Pixaro, and I have 100 gallons. Okay. Now what I'd like to do is I'm going to enter a job right here. Go to manage job scheduling. And I'm going to click on add and select my fields. And let me choose several. You can either choose over here on the checkbox, or you can choose the map itself. Click select locations. I'm going to assume it's still the same crop. I'm going to go ahead and put 5-gallon work here. And on the application, you can either leave it empty or you could put the not applicable vendor, however you want to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and show you headline has the default vendor here, so you can set up defaults. I'm going to change that rate. You can set up default rates as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and put that Pixaro there. And it didn't have a default, but I'm going to go ahead and say it is CPS here. And I'll just put 0.2 ounces. Now, if you'll notice, whenever you set your chemical up, I set it to maintain an inventory for gallons. So it converts my ounces to gallons. So when it reduces it from inventory, it will tell me how many gallons came out. We do retain I think around 6 or 7 decimal point internal database of the gallons. So internally, it's all going to add up to be correct on the inventory on hand. We may not display all of those points, but internally we add them all together. All right, so we want it to be as exact as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and assign it to an applicator and click on save. Normally I would print my applicator report, but for this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and say that we finished the work. So I'm going to go to applied info, add applied info. I'll say Eddie did it on this particular date. And I'm going to go ahead and skip some information here, just go straight down to the time. I'll just use my weather app here. And then I'm going to transfer that to an invoice. All right. And then we're going to come down here. Okay, most likely I would print that, but I'm going to go ahead. You can see where I have my Pixaro there. I'm just going to post this in individual invoice. So, because I believe my setting said to see my quantity on hand at the posted level. So now if I do an inventory quantity on hand, and I go ahead and view report, I come down to CPS Pixaro, I'll see that I have 99.65 gallons because it took away the chemical from that job. So if I actually wanted to see the detail, I could go to inventory, chemical history report, and I could just filter by that one particular. I could do either the vendor or the chemical or both the vendor and the chemical. The report is all about the filtering. If I want to come in here and say I only want to see Pixaro here, and I view report, it's going to show me the detail of how I got to that 99.65 right there. So it shows me that I added right here 100 gallons on 552021. And then I had an invoice with this number, reference number, and it has the customer information there, crop, acres, and the quantity of ounces, but then it has my inventory quantity of 0.35, so it gives me 99.65 right there. So that's how the chemical history reports. The chemical history report can be a really good tool, especially if maybe a vendor, maybe CPS wanted to see all of the jobs that you did, and they wanted to see it, group it by customer, and then see what they had remaining and see all their details. So I'm going to click on that, and let me say none on the secondary group. There's all kinds of sorts there, but if you look at this, you'll see each customer and every job that was done on CPS within that date range. You can also choose any date range that you want. So we can come in here and we'll see each customer with all of their invoices and addresses. So this allows them to make sure, they have records of what was sent out for those customers. So maybe they want to bill them for the chemicals that they delivered. There's all kinds of different ways you could do this. So we also have a reorder report. So on your chemical setup right here, let me show you right here. Let me go back to that particular Pixaro. And if you'll notice, it updated my unit cost with the latest costs that I added. I could put a reorder quantity right here. I'll just say once it gets down to, I'll just say 20. We can say that. And once it gets down that far, then it will show up on my reorder report. So I'm going to go to my inventory reorder report. And if I wanted to filter it by particular customer or chemical, whatever I want to do, I can click on that and click on view report. And it brings up the the chemicals that I have. Sometimes I forgot to put in my addition, so it'll be a negative quantity on hand if I, maybe did jobs without creating my addition. But either way, you'll see your reorder quantity and the unit costs there on record. All right, so you can also print out your cost report. So if I click on that, and maybe I only wanted to look at my CPS, what I have on hand for the CPS right here. So only for CPS, I have my cost. Like I had said, I have some negatives in there. So right here, the CPS Roundup Concentrate, I never did do any addition, so I've got a negative there. So anyway, it's just a really good report to kind of give you an idea. Maybe if I didn't filter it by CPS, I could see everything right there. So it kind of gives you an idea of what your cost is. All right, so there we go. And then if you need to do adjustments right there. So right now I could just say, if I wanted to take an inventory and say at the end of the year or whenever you want to take inventory, and you printed your quantity on hand and you saw that it was way off, you could just start adjusting right here. So you could say, what date do I want to put on it's going to create a transaction in your inventory ads and adjust it for it to be a positive or a negative, depending on what you correct it to be. So for instance, this right here, I have minus 15 pounds. I could go in there and say that really needs to be a 0 and I have none anymore. So it'll correct it, but it'll do an adjustment for that 15 pounds. Right here, I'm going to just say it's 0 there. But maybe this one right here, instead of 1 gallon, I really counting 5 gallons, so it'll add 4 to it, And it does that in your inventory review posted additions deductions right here. And it does it with an IA inventory adjustment right there, so you'll see how it's adjusted, So that is the summary of our inventory. If you have some detailed questions, please give us a call at 870-238-9222, and we'll be happy to help. Thank you.